I mean, Easwaran, I want to reiterate the fact that I was never a member of a cabinet in this country. Nobody thought that I was good enough. I'm sorry, right? I am angry for the people of this country. We don't need to suffer like this.
So you're angry for the people of this country, but the people of this country are also angry at people like you, at all 225 members of parliament.
Let us give them that change, Easwaran.
But then the change is still the same faces.
No, that is, in a democracy, everybody has the freedom to put themselves forward,
Prove yourself.
can prove yourself.
You said that you don't like the Rajapakshas, but you didn't say you don't like Ranil Wickremesinghe.
We are committed to working with whoever the president is until the presidential election obviously is called.
So even if Sajid Premdasa became president today, the crisis will still remain.
No, the crisis needs to be addressed. It's a technical issue.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of On Fire for the year 2023 here on Daily Mirror Online. I'm Easwaran Rutnam. The year 2022 was of course a year remembered for not just the protests but the economic crisis that we faced, and 2023 doesn't seem to be much different, at least by going by the forecast that we are seeing and reading. Today on the program with me is someone who is well versed with the subject when it comes to the economy, and he's a member of parliament from the Samagi Janabala Vegia, Dr. Harsha de Silva. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, sir.
So, is my assessment correct to say that 2023 is not looking any better, at least at the moment?
Well, one has to be optimistic, and I am optimistic. Even though I'm in opposition, I chair the Public Finance Committee, and I am doing my utmost to ensure that the government is able to agree with the rest of us and also convince the people of the need for reform. Because unless we go through a fairly dramatic cycle of reform, it is not going to be possible for us to convince the IMF particularly that we will come close even to the forecast that the Treasury has made in terms of the revenue and expenditure numbers, and also the issue of debt sustainability thereon. If we are not able to do that, then the rest of the story comes to a screeching halt. Now, while we do the reforms, we also have to ensure that our creditors, both multilateral, bilateral, and also the private creditors, those are the ISB holders, are sort of willing to give us some undertaking. In the case of bilateral creditors, we want specific and credible undertaking in terms of how they are going to deal with the debt we owe to them, and a good faith effort, of course, by the ISP holders. Now, all that is linked.
Yeah.
You see, they won't give us those undertakings unless they see commitment from our side, right? And unless there is commitment from our side, those guys won't give it. It's a chicken and egg situation, right? So therefore, in my view, yes, we belong to different political parties. Yes, we have our own agendas. Yes, I absolutely dislike the Rajapaksa group that President Wickremesinghe is working with. I don't see how they can get us out of the problem they got us into, because still they don't seem to really appreciate the problem. Having said all that, given the context, we are, as a party, we have taken a middle path. We have said, look, these reforms are necessary. Yes, IMF is required. Yes, we need to go through, a tough period. But the difference between these people who are running the country and us is that we are a social market economy, meaning that we have equity and justice. The people who are underprivileged, that we need to look after them, is also a fundamental pillar in our thinking. So I am optimistic for the sake of the country.
I mean, I noticed, at least took note of the fact that you said that you don't like the Rajapakshas, but you didn't say you don't like Ranil Wickremesinghe.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with Wickremesinghe as president? Do you think that he can deliver, if not for some of these people around him?
Well, I mean, let's be realistic, right? He's got how many months more in the term he's serving of the Gotabaya Rajapaksa presidency. And we don't intend to, do anything unconstitutional. So therefore, we are committed to working with whoever the president is until the presidential election obviously is called. Therefore, on the one hand, that doesn't bother us. And on the other hand, I did say the difference between his policies and our policies is the focus on equity and justice. Now, that I don't think he's able to sort of bring forth, because, I've worked with him. That's the way he thinks, right? But we are, however, committed to the reforms. So in that context, we really don't have much of a disagreement in what needs to be done in terms of.
Do you have any regrets not accepting? I believe he made so many offers to you. Do you have regrets not accepting? Do you think that if you were in the cabinet, you could have done more to change the situation, to push your ideas further, as opposed to doing it through the parliament committees?
No, I don't regret. I have told him personally on multiple occasions that I am unable to join him with the group that he's in. Now, in my view, right, it's good to have a government, hopefully led by the SJB, that would be more aligned to the reform agenda that not just he's talking about, what we have been talking about. You see, I mean, I tabled a 10-point brief document as the head of the economic policy unit of the SJB, and we are the only political party to have done that. The government has not done it. No other party has done it. And we, sort of fairly, it's fairly well articulated, the kinds of reforms that need to be done. So we don't want to, get on a political stage and, lie to the people, saying we have a sort of a, magic wand, that will bring a resolution to this problem overnight. And that, we have some homegrown solution, we don't need the IMF, etc. That's absolute bunkum nonsense. And sometimes I wonder, some Colombo elite also seem to be of some illusion that, some
Change
other
in administration would bring change.
I mean, yes.
So even if Sajid Premdasa became president today, the crisis will still remain.
No, the crisis needs to be addressed. It's a technical issue, right? I mean, when I hear some people say that, look, when we are in office, if we come to office, all these different countries will help us and all that. That's not going to happen.
And that those people are people who are in your party as well.
I
who are
mean,
saying all this.
I'm not critical of the people of our party because, at the end of the day, people like Kabir, Iran, myself, we have, I would say, strong enough say.
Yeah.
And Sajid is very much with us in the thinking. I mean, some of our people criticize Sajid for saying, look, he wants to give this away, give that away. And I've had these conversations with him over the last 2 years, perhaps, Kabir and Iran also included. He's moved very much to the center, right? And I'll give you an example where in a recent issue of liberalizing, in the petroleum sector, there was a rather animated debate between the pro-reformers and perhaps one could say anti-reformers. And as a leader of the party, he said, look, listen, these reforms must happen. Right? That was a strong statement. And that brought everybody into one sort of to the same page. The way we do it would certainly be different to the way President RW is tackling it, right? We would do other things. We would sequence it differently. And we've studied how some other countries have done it. But we don't see any way out outside of the fundamental sort of changes that need to be done to the Sri Lankan economic structure.
Is going to the IMF inevitable? I mean, Shehan Singh, during one of the interviews he had with us, was saying that that was the only solution that we had at the moment, or probably the most important solution that we could turn to. But then we see others, like the other day we had some 182 economists also raising concerns, foreign economists also raising concerns about the IMF as a whole, whether these reforms will actually be helpful to Sri Lanka, whether it will just add to the burden.
You see, I was the first MP to have advocated that we go to the IMF. That was in the first speech I made in the new parliament after getting elected from the district of Colombo. And I already saw the problem, getting out of hand. And since the first statement, I've probably said it 25 times in parliament and more times outside, I think. We all know. And once Ranil Wickremesinghe as an MP came to parliament, he made the same statement, right? Because it is not the IMF per se, it is the reforms that are needed, right? Whether it is in sort of the trade and investment policy, whether it is in the monetary policy, whether it is in fiscal policy, right? Whether
They
it
are
is
basically forcing us to do something which we should have done anyway.
we should have done anyway. We should have done anyway. You see, the first reforms happened post 77. JRJ did the reforms. With Atula Mudali coming in, taking the port, liberalizing the port, the industries ministry coming in, creating the free trade zones, the investment and trade policy research that reforms that created dynamic manufacturing zone in the western province, but the reforms didn't go far enough. We should have done more reforms. We got stuck halfway. 83 happened and the focus was elsewhere, and then the politics, right? And the second set of reforms was done by President Premadasa. right? And he had two IMF programs. He peopleized a whole bunch of state-owned enterprises that were bleeding the treasury. And recall, he did massive investment and trade reform. Recall the 200 garment factory initiative, and he took employment to the rural areas. Now, the thing what a lot of people have written about the Premadasa reforms, I'm saying people who are looking at these reforms from outside as individual researchers, is that he was able to do the social justice and the equity piece also at the same time, right? The Jana Savia and the school meals and the kids' uniforms and all of that. So there was a blend of both things that he did. But after that, except for a little bit that Mangala did with telco reforms and all that, and what RW did in the 2001-3 period in terms of the external gateway reforms, creating the space for IT and IT related services, ICT agency and all that. And in the 15-19 government, unfortunately, there was a clash of ideologies, right? And in that time, I know for a fact how much, effort that, me as a junior minister, I was never in the cabinet, took to get the Active Liability Management Act passed, the central bank, a new central bank act passed, that's the Monetary Law Act, which, for instance, like somebody once said, I think Indrajit said it recently at a talk, that if we had the new Monetary Law Act or the reforms to that or the amendments to that act passed during the 15-19 government, this calamity probably would not have happened, because one critical piece in that is that the central bank cannot print money, meaning it cannot purchase treasury bills in the primary auction, which is commonly meant as printing money. Now, that is the reason, right, that there was this thing called the modern monetary theory that they believed in. I tore them to pieces, but hardly anyone understood. I referenced perhaps the top economists of the world and said how this will ruin this country, because they said, cut taxes, fill the treasury with printed money. That is what they did. Cut taxes, fill the treasury with printed money, spend printed money.
And after 2019.
Yeah. After 2019, 1 December or something, right, the taxes were cut.
Yeah.
And that was linked to the modern monetary theory. They completely misunderstood Stephanie Kelton's sort of logic, right? They didn't read the book properly, right? What is possible in a country with hard currency like the United States or Japan doesn't necessarily mean it applies to a country like Sri Lanka, where every rupee printed will only be consumed inside the 65,000 square kilometers here. Not even Mohammed Mustafa's in Singapore will now today take Sri Lanka rupee. So the ideologically there was a conflict, right? So therefore those reforms couldn't happen. But the point is, except for those short periods of time, we have gone backwards, because the ideology was, look, we can sort of kind of close up, Deshiya, we will do it ourselves, we have homegrown solutions, bunkum, right? Absolute bunkum, right? So now they are saying, look, we need to do the reforms. I read Shehan had said in Anuradhapura a couple of days ago that people who are criticizing the IMF deal,
Yeah. Don't know the bigger picture.
they don't know the bigger picture. I agree with him. He's right. But unfortunately, it took such a long time for I'm not saying Shehan,
Yeah.
he's trying and I appreciate what he's trying to do.
He was also part of the former administration. They
This
could
is
have
what
pushed for change.
that is what I'm saying. When we said these reforms are required, they told us, shut up and get out. We know what needs to be done.
So
So
you think they are now suddenly agreeing to these reforms with, as some say, with a hidden agenda? They're using Ranil Wickremesinghe just to come into power, and then would they change tracks again?
I don't know. I mean, this is the question. I mean, I see what I mean. Shehan, I feel, understands the issue, and like I said, I appreciate the commitment, and I think it's coming really from inside, right? But I don't see that with the majority of those guys, right? I mean, I saw recently a advertisement in I think the Sunday Times and the Lanka Deepa, calling for applications for their port to a local government campaign. I mean, they said, let's go back to the era of development. And what was in the background? Big concrete structures. I mean, doesn't seem to have got through to them. Those debt-fueled concrete structures are the reasons, right, why we are here today.
But this 182 economists who had issued this statement the other day, they were also saying that private lenders are one of the main reasons here, and not bilateral lenders. Do you think that was?
I mean, this is a particular school of thought. I mean, I don't expect anything else but this kind of statement. Now, what they are saying is the high risks that the private investors took in investing in Sri Lanka has to be compensated with high reward, high risk, high return, right? So which also means that it can go the other way because the risk is high, right? So what they're saying is they were given a premium because the risk was high. Now that default, which is the dreaded result of any investor, is here today, then they should be agreeable to accept that outcome as well. And therefore, there is no reason why they should be negotiating with Clifford Chance and Lazard on behalf of the government of Sri Lanka to get a sweeter deal, right? So what they're saying is, you guys are not really, within the context of what you agreed upon. But that's not how the world works.
Yeah.
Whether it is BlackRock or whoever it is, the hedge funds that own a bulk of our debt, they are governed by New York state law, which gives what are called collective action clauses in every series of every bond that we have issued. And in those, there are certain commitments we have made. And in a court of law, they are only looking at the written word and the fine print. Whether it is equitable by us or not is a political matter. That's a diplomatic matter, right? That is why you need a government in place that has a mandate of the people of this country. If you have a government with a mandate of the people, then that government can certainly negotiate for a better deal. Whether it is with the multilaterals, whether it is with the bilaterals, whether it is with the private creditors. And whoever wants to negotiate with the current set of officials are saying, these guys have no mandate. These guys can get kicked out any time. Who are these guys appearing on behalf of, right?
There are concerns about policies if a new administration comes into office.
Absolutely, right? So
But that is also one of the biggest issues that Sri Lanka has been having over the past few years, hasn't it? That is this whole inconsistent policies.
true. I mean, policy consistency is something that we absolutely need, right? And that is why I think, even perhaps constitutional amendments are necessary to bring in some discipline. 2003 we brought in what is called the Fiscal Management Responsibility Act, and if the governments of the day, abided by those the limits that were put, right, we would not be in this position today, right? We just continue to kick the can down the road, postpone the meeting of certain debt to GDP ratios 3 years down the road, the budget deficit limits 5 years down the road, right? And then, borrow, build some useless tower, etc., etc. So we need the discipline. If we are not disciplined, let somebody else discipline us, right? Because we are now in a global marketplace. We started playing big when Nivad Cabral went and borrowed $500 million from the market in 2007 or 2008. He indicated to the world, we are big boys, we are ready to play. If we are ready to play, we have to play by the rules, right? You can't play, suddenly say, look, excuse me, I'm not willing to play by the rules. That's not how the world works, right? So we lack discipline. This governments for some period of time have been indisciplined, and this is the price of fiscal indisciplineness, right? Irresponsible management of public finance, right? I mean, just to give you an anecdote, my name was proposed from the opposition to be the chairman of the Public Finance Committee, which is the check and balance with the Ministry of Finance, right? I'm not saying because of me, just an opposition MP to hold these people in check. What did they do? They used the tyranny of their majority and said, look, Harsha de Silva can go fly a kite. We will appoint somebody of our own to be the chairman of the Public Finance Committee. So check and balance was all within the port tour. Right? I'm not saying Andreyapa was, I'm not talking about him, but that whole idea that we don't need any discipline, we don't need anyone looking into our affairs, we don't need oversight. We know. BS they knew. Right? I am angry for the people of this country. We don't need to suffer like this, right? Because of incompetence, arrogance, inability to understand how the world works, pure politics, right? Hunger, greed for power. These are the reasons why we are in this situation. Not
These
because
people, you said you're angry for the people of this country, but the people of this country are also angry at people like you, at all 225 members of parliament. They keep saying that, some say, they are not being realistic, but they still say it, that we are angry at our entire parliamentary system, that they want a proper change there.
So let us give them that change, Easwaran.
But then the change is still the same faces.
No, that is, in a democracy, everybody has the freedom to put themselves forward,
Prove yourself.
and prove yourself, right? I had no political background. My father or my mother, so nobody was a politician. I'm just a kid of a middle class family, right? Both parents are government servants. I got here on my own strength, fallen and gotten up multiple times. And, I tell the people the truth,
That you had a chance. Some of your current members were in government back then in 2015. Now you spoke about, some of these useless towers and all.
Yeah.
Ranil Wickremesinghe also stopped the Port City project at one point. Then he resumed it. They stopped the Lotus Tower project, then they resumed it as well. Were these projects, I know in Parliament also you had a very animated debate with Chanakyan MP on China and whether China is responsible for some of the issues that we're facing right now. But could these problems have been averted even when you were in power, when you were in office in 2015, 2019?
I mean, Easwaran, I want to reiterate the fact that I was never a member of a cabinet in this country. Nobody thought that I was good enough. I'm sorry, right? That's their assessment, or because I was not senior enough. I wasn't close enough to the powers that be, right? That's not how countries should be run, right? Even not having been a minister, I have done certain things for the people of this country. I'm not going to go there, but one has to have the authority to be able to make such decisions, right? If
So
I'm
if you
never,
had the authority, you would have taken.
I am doing this. I'm still continuing to be a part of this because I hope one day I will be able to have the authority with others, obviously, to be able to do things that need to be done to change change the course of this nation. That's why I'm here.
Would it be too late by then?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that they should not be, you know, much further down, further down the road.
So you're confident of a change happening very soon, sooner than later.
Sooner than later, and let people have their choice. If they want to bring in ABC, let them bring ABC or JKL, whoever, right? I mean, just give people, and also note that this is not purely a financial crisis. Some people I hear say, oh, this is a financial crisis. No, it is not. It's a complete economic, political, social crisis, right? And just look at even the past and see how countries finally fix themselves. It is through, the free will of the people, a mandate, a new government, right? You can push elections, for another 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. The problem is not going to go away. It's only get more complicated.
For elections, since you mentioned elections, and people are debating that issue as well. Is now the time for us to go for an election?
It is very much the time to go for an election. I told in Parliament, I told RW, President RW subsequently also. And my suggestion is this, that yes, it costs some 8 to 10 billion rupees to conduct an election. And yes, it's a fair sum of money, right? And we don't need to appoint another 12 ministers to the cabinet. We can sack all those 38 state ministers or whoever they appointed just to, buy votes. I'm being serious here. If your country is in crisis, why do you need 60 ministers? I mean, come on, man. Don't, treat us like a bunch of idiots, right? How many billions does that cost, right? Now, in this case, the local government elections are due. By March, President RW can dissolve the parliament. That is his right. We are not challenging his right to be there. You heard what I said at the beginning, right? What I'm saying is use the authority you have and get rid of this parliament.
But if there's an election, if there's a new parliament, if let's say the SJB comes into office, SJB is willing to work with President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
Absolutely. We are willing to work with the President RW for the rest of his term. Right? We have no qualms about that, right? But what I'm saying is, now collapse these two things. Have one election. You see, when I said this, Dinesh Gunawardena tried to twist it and say I didn't understand the constitution, that in our constitution you can't have, there is no, space for a midterm election. I didn't talk about a midterm election here. What I said is in the United States, you have a Senate race and a congressional race at the same time. You have, line item, so many things that you vote for. I mean, just look at a ballot paper of the state of Missouri or something like that, you will very clearly understand what I'm talking about. Now, in countries like South Africa, for instance, right? South Africa, has all the elections together. I think including the presidential, parliamentary, provincial, all of that. Indonesia is going to do that. I think India will also do that soon. So why can't we do that? Why do we need 2 days, 3 days, 1 day presidential election, another 110 billion, another 10 billion for parliament election, another 10 billion for provincial election, yet another 10 billion for local government election? What for? Whose benefit? Have one silly election man and have everybody elected on the same date. Right? I mean, I don't see why anybody should oppose this proposal. Right? And then he can have it. Let whoever has the confidence of the people be elected, and let them undertake a serious negotiation with our creditors, because whoever that is will have credibility, will have legitimacy. There are I mean, Ranil Wickremesinghe is the legitimate legal, I guess, president of this Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka. Now, whether he has the backing of the people, I mean, we don't need to get there.
Yeah.
But that's a different story, because it is within the constitution.
Since we are running out of time, just want to ask you about the whole idea of privatizing state enterprises or loss-making enterprises. Since this is also a process that was going on for some time, Sri Lankan Airlines especially, I mean, where do you, I mean, at least what sort of policies would BSJB take when it comes to these sort of loss-making state enterprises?
I mean, some of these state enterprises should never have been state enterprises. Should never have been. Right? They don't need to exist. Get rid of them. I mean, you look at Sri Lankan Airlines, for instance. I mean, what a drain on the public purse. $1 billion. I mean, whose money is this? Right? And lack of efficiency. Right? I mean, look at some hundreds and hundreds of state-owned enterprises. Hundreds, no, thousands of politically appointed people. Hundreds of Mitsubishi Monteros and Toyota V8 or whatever the hell you call those things, right? Thousands of foreign trips paid for by these people. Where is efficiency? Are those things productive? Look at. I mean, at the end of the day, we need to run a tight ship here. Right? Politicians don't talk about total factor productivity. They don't talk about the need for technology. The additional output beyond your inputs. About how management is done. Right? It's about increasing efficiency, increasing productivity. So these come with tight, KPI based management techniques. They don't come with, you serve for 2 years, therefore you get this increment, whether you work or not is immaterial to us. It is all based on seniority, so therefore, don't even try to work hard. There is no incentive to do so. That's not how companies are run. I am saying, as an entrepreneur, right? I was once an entrepreneur. I built with some other person, right? Another person, a successful enterprise, right? I know what it is, right? And that is just saying, look, that entrepreneurial spirit is not in everyone, right? Just because you are connected to the minister and you become a chairman doesn't mean you're going to run a successful company, right? And that. Look at airports in India. How horrid they were. Look at the airports in India now. I mean, sometimes you wonder whether you are landing in Switzerland or whether you're landing in Hyderabad. Right? I mean, look at Indian airlines. Right? I mean, just look at South India. Don't look too far. Right? So, state enterprise, state-owned enterprise reform is critical, and we will continue to reform state-owned enterprises, right? Now, one has to be careful about the employees. Are you going to kick them out? No, I don't think that is the way to do it. There are multiple options to deal with employees, right? And you know, we can always look at like examples like Temasek in Singapore. There are many examples that we can learn from. And ultimately, you need a share owning public, no? I mean, you should be able to say, you know, I own X amount of shares of this company, which is bringing this much a dividend to the state. I mean, asset owning class is what we need to create. That is a wealth that we need to create in this country. I mean, I don't like to see, you know, bunch of workers. I would like to see a bunch of entrepreneurs, or a bunch of, you know, asset owning population. Right? Then only that you will also be committed. This country can be changed. I am optimistic.
With that, we'll have to leave it. Thank you so much for taking time and joining us on the program today, Dr. Harsha de Silva.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for the opportunity, sir.
So that's all the time we have for you for this first edition of On Fire here on Daily Mirror Online for the year 2023. Till next time, do stay safe.